What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets powered by FTN. I'm your host, Chris Meaney. Thanks, as always, for taking the time to hang out. I got a great guest lined up, as you can see. But first, I wanted to give some love to Collectible. Give them a follow on Twitter. Collectible app, the number one fractional investing platform for sports. You can invest in iconic sports cards and memorabilia. Exclusive sign-up prizes for FTN listeners. Collectible is a new app that lets any fan buy and sell real equity shares in the world's most rare and exciting sports card collectibles. Listen, it is free to sign up. FTN, use that promo code. You're automatically entered to win a free signed Babe Ruth card, as well as over 10K in other sports card prizes as well. There's two links you got to know: collectible.com/FTN, collectible.com/the100. So free. Babe Ruth signed card. Come on, get in on that. Use that promo code FTN. So continuing the MLB team previews here. Washington Nationals, the team today, but I'm going to pick this guy's brain and talk a lot of just fantasy baseball and stuff. And this has been, the third week in a row now I've been able to talk to him. So I'm all smiles as we bring in Jon Pisapia. He is the author of the number one best-selling fantasy black book series. Get your copy today. This guy here, I got it. Oh, baby.
Oh, look at it. Sexy. Look how good it looks on camera.
Oh, baby. Also the host of the Fantasy Pros podcast, In This Ring, for wrestling fans out there, and a TV host at Sports Grid. An absolute star, taking the time to join us today. Really appreciate it, Joe. What's up, man?
I'm so glad you and I are now back on the wagon together. Let me tell you. And I mean back on the wagon doing shows, just in case anyone has negative thoughts there. Because Chris Meaney and I are used to doing shows every day together for years and years. And then, different paths take you different places. We always still talk and play in leagues together. But it's about time. We're both finally, I think, where we're supposed to be. And it is so nice to be talking baseball with you today. And I'd like to invest on Collectible and all the shares of Chris Meaney that I can. That's what I would like to do.
Yeah, well, I respect that. I appreciate it, of course. Yeah. I mean, Collectible is cool. Obviously, you got a lot of people are talking about cards, and I wanted to do that with you today. Unfortunately, I went to go grab a box. We're going to open up a couple, and I just all sold out. I mean, we couldn't get any in time. So maybe we'll do it another time, maybe midway through the year or something to have you on. We'll open up a box of cards and just talk about the random players.
Now I don't even know if I want to stay. I'll stay.
I should have even told you. I know.
I said this is a great idea. Jake Seeley didn't want to do it because he's a stick in the mud, and that guy, he's just miserable all the time. I want to have some fun. Let's open some cards, but that's okay. We'll do it another time.
Jake joined this week to talk about the Mets, your guys' Mets. And it was always a fun conversation when you and I and him were together on shows, and award-winning shows, by the way.
That's right.
We'll say that. That's we're off to a good start here today. But yeah, about the Mets, and I would just sit back and listen to you guys talk about the Mets. Jake, down, you're optimistic. No, and I just get in there and I'm like, Jake, I think you're a little hard on the Mets, man. I think you're a little hard on a couple guys, but we are going to talk about the Nats. But I wanted to get your thoughts just with everything that has happened. I know you're so in tune with everything and updating the Black Book constantly for everybody out there. Just a lot of injuries over the past few days. Jimenez is tough. I mean, this guy's going to be, looks like, out for the season, 5-6 months. George Springer, something popped up. But relievers, Joe, Yates, Anderson, Leclerc, Zach Gallen fractured his forearm swinging a bat. Like, it's rough. Like, what is, over the past couple weeks, or maybe even just the past couple days, like, what has changed, if anything, in just terms of relievers for you? Because now it seems like there's a lot of teams maybe just rolling through committees. Does it make you want to grab a stud early or wait it out and try to find some value with some of these guys that were going to pop up and be valuable? We didn't think that they would be maybe a couple weeks ago.
Well, this is why I always let the closer market come to me in every draft. Like, if you see any draft of mine on Labor or Tout or wherever, and you and I do a ton together, I just don't care. Like, I'm not going to chase saves in roto leagues. I'm just not going to do it. It's one category. It's also why I don't like roto formats, to tell you the truth. I like points leagues because I can devalue the save appropriately. It's only 3 damn outs. Why the hell should it be equal to a win, which is 5 whole innings, mind you? Okay. They're not the same thing. All right. 1 and 5. See, 5 is the bigger number than 1, just in case, no math majors out there watching the show, but I just don't understand why we're doing this. And now we're looking at, obviously some chaos here with a lot of these bullpens. The Texas one's completely up for grabs. Like, who knows who that's going to be? I think that's going to be a sheer committee. You're going to run away from that. Baltimore is another one too. And even mention Hunter Harvey too. He was supposed to be that guy and he's now done for a while. And that's a very frustrating one because he was kind of the late pivots I was looking for. Amir Garrett's a guy I've had a lot of shares of. I'm trying to get him on the down low because he's got that closer mentality and he's already looked very good so far this spring. And they've been very careful with him, which tells you they had a role in mind for him as an organization. So that was a little bit of, kind of inside baseball, so to speak. But yeah, the bullpens have been rough here. Diego Castillo obviously gets a big bump up. Jordan Romano gets a big bump up. Romano's been brilliant this spring.
Yeah,
and going back to the Eloy Jimenez injury, I think the big winner here is Andrew Vaughn because I don't think there's any way he doesn't start with the big club. I think that's a foregone conclusion now. And he's got every day at bats now right in front of him. All he's got to do is go out there and produce. And I think he can. And certainly that lineup can sustain a young player's confidence and continue to build there. But you know what? This is why drafting early is so tough. And this is why for baseball too, it feels like every year we go through the same thing and you're better off just waiting as long as you can. And I don't understand why more leagues don't wait as long as they can.
Yeah, you have to. Same thing as football, right? I always wait until the very end in baseball. A lot of you and I are going to draft tonight in your home league in an auction. So, I mean, just a couple days away from the season, I would have been. I don't even know if Jimenez was capped. He probably was. I was going to be a guy that was going to be like, let's go. I want him.
He was kept, and I've already offered a trade for him. Because it's a keeper.
I love it. Yeah, savvy. I would agree. There's another guy too who was debating on keeping him for an 18th round in one of my leagues. It's like, yeah, you got to do it. You just stash him. I mean, next year you get him for a 16th. He's an absolute stud. And if you don't want to keep him, I'll have him. I'll take him off your hands. There's no question. Jen Piacenti came in here to talk about the Astros, and all she wanted to do was talk about the White Sox and Vaughn. And that was a couple weeks ago. And then we had our guy Kyle Murray here at FTN. We previewed the White Sox, and we talked a lot about Vaughn too. You're right. It seems like he's going to be the biggest winner from the injury to Jimenez, which is just tough. And Juan Soto left yesterday in a game, but it was just something minor. Hopefully nothing too serious there because Tatis left last week too with something minor. So hopefully no more injuries. All right, Nationals. Let's get into it. 26-34 last season. Mm-hmm. They're 50-1 to win the World Series, 30-1 in most spots, but using the free prop shop over at ftnbets.com where you can get the best possible odds, PointsBet has 50-1. Now, I don't think that they're World Series contender, but that's, some decent odds, 50-1 where you can get 30-1 everywhere else. 25-1 NL pennant, 650 to win the division, NL East, plus 135 to win or just to make the playoffs, Joe, and then 84.5 the win total. This is a tough division, man. A lot of these teams are going to beat up on each other. What do you make of the Nats' low win total? Can they get over 84, 85? Because, if I assume what you're going to talk about is the pitching staff with those guys in Scherzer and Corbin and Strasburg. If those guys can stay healthy, this is a team that can win 90 games.
Yeah, I definitely think it is. And it does come down to those pitchers. And Scherzer's pitching for a contract and he is a bulldog and it's a little scary because there's a lot of mileage on Max Scherzer. Now he can still be lights out incredible. We saw it at times last year, but we've also seen the last few years kind of just the wear and tear of all of the innings and the postseason innings that this guy's had in his career, just, starting to catch up a little bit. And I think that that's just fair. I'm not ready to count him out completely yet. In fact, in our league, I actually kept him, but to me, they need two of these pitchers to be really good in order to be an over 500 team and to approach closer to 90 wins as opposed to something like 84. And that is very possible. I like the offseason acquisition of Brad Hand too into the bullpen. Let's get a real closer in there. And I think Hand is just that. So that is a very big positive for them also. But, the back of this rotation is not really exciting. I did not like the addition of Jon Lester. I thought they were better places they could have gone with that. And this is also not a very exciting young pipeline of pitchers. And that's the other thing you have to keep in mind, which you look at some other organizations and the war of attrition that is the Major League Baseball season, they can lean on some of these younger arms that they've got to come in and maybe give them 50 innings, 60 innings, maybe give them half a dozen starts at some point in over the entire 6 months of the season. But the Nats really don't have that. So yes, Lester can eat some innings. The problem is you look at Lester's FIP last year and it was terrible. Even when the ERA was good, it was all smoke and mirrors. So I don't think there's much left in that Lester tank. Corbin is kind of that's the hinge, right? Because Corbin, if he is right, he is about as good as it gets. And if he's back to where he was last year, that's a concern. Now, he has said publicly the stop and start hurt him. The routine was off and all of that. Strasburg is another one too. This is a player in fantasy who's got a second round grade talent, right? And he's going in like the 4th or 5th round, depending upon your drafts. And I think he's a fascinating way to, if you're going hitting early, maybe take a chance on Strasburg. If he approaches 200 innings, you're going to get well over 200 strikeouts and probably 15 wins and close to that. So the Nats, just from a rotation standpoint, are fascinating because they have potentially the best trio in baseball.
Yeah.
But it's potential and it's circled with a question mark, and it's got a big if because of, frankly, the health issues of all three of these guys at the top. So if you want to take the chance on them going over, it's because these pitchers are going to be good, because I think the offense is going to be pretty all right.
Yeah, I think the offense too. We'll get into that in a little bit. Scherzer ADP NFBC just this month alone, in the month of March, 26, ninth pitcher off the board, min 13. So people are willing to actually take this guy in the first. They see the upside because for years, I don't even remember going back when the last time this guy wasn't talked about as a top 3 pitcher in fantasy. Like, you just knew what you were going to get. You alluded to the innings, the strikeouts were always there. Very small sample size last year, but a hard hit rate, a line drive rate, a walk rate that, was among the worst of his career. But I think the biggest question mark is for me, it's the back too. Like, when you start seeing back injuries creep up, it does create a value on draft day, but also a little bit, for me, just a pause if I'm going to take this guy. So you see the min and the max. The min is 13, the max is 50. So there's a lot of people that are absolutely just torn on Scherzer. ADP for Strasbourg, 68, SP 21 off the board on average, and then Corbin 132, 51 off the board among starting pitchers. So Scherzer, you mentioned keeper league. You're keeping him.
And I had him at a premium too. Like, he was a $50 pitcher, and my whole instinct was let's try one more go.
Yeah.
Let's see how it goes here, because I know if you drop a pitcher back in a head-to-head points league in an auction, you're going to end up paying somewhere close to that anyway. So why do I want to even play around with it? Like, let's just keep him one more time. And if it fails, it fails. But the good news is, on that particular roster, it's easier because I got Cole and Nola on that same roster. So it makes it a lot easier to then go ahead and have a guy like Max Scherzer, as a 3. Okay, that's fine. Like, if he ends up being a 3, that's not the worst thing in the world. But, you talk about the potential wagers on some of these guys too. If there's one guy that I'm going to bet on for them out of the 3, it's definitely Scherzer, because of that bulldog mentality. Like, he is mentally so tough that I think he is not happy with how things went. I mean, he battled through the World Series with injuries. A couple of years ago, remember the black eye that he had, which is actually the 3rd color eye for Max Scherzer, which is, a whole other weird thing. But this is, he is all-time great. He's a Hall of Fame pitcher, in my opinion. So for me, if I'm going to bet on somebody, it's him. Strasburg, the other day he heard something in his calf, and it turned out it's not a calf muscle you use. Only Steven Strasburg could rupture a muscle that's not even used. I don't even know how that's a thing, but leave it to Steven Strasburg. But he's a gamble I'm willing to take in fantasy leagues, but I wouldn't be making wagering investments on Strasburg because, history tells us it's just not a good investment on that end. But in like a season-long roto league, if he gives you 25 really good starts, you'll take that. The problem is, in head-to-head formats, that's where Strasburg can hurt you. If he ever misses significant time, or, 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, that's the problem when it comes to a guy like Strasburg. And then Corbin, look, you're getting enough of a discount on Corbin. I think you just wanted to see him healthy, but still the velocity is not quite where it should be. So it's a gamble, but it's a later gamble. So I'm willing to take it. But of all the 3, Scherzer's the guy to bet on.
Yeah, I think so too. Scherzer's the guy for me. I have no problem where he's going. I think it's that's why I see the min 13, and I kind of respect it because what he can bring in the upside there. The guy that I am most worried about is Strasburg, just because of over the years with the injuries, and hardly pitched last year, and then dealing with a couple things so far this season. I thought that they should have brought back Anthony Rendon and just kind of let him walk off, but he was so brilliant in that World Series run. It's tough. You look back at it now, but I'm always in the mindset of
what they did, Chris?
Batter as opposed to the pitcher.
You are right. The problem is, I think that the pipeline made that decision for them. They didn't have the next Strasburg coming through. None of the guys, the Austin Voss of the world, and the guys that they've had, the young pitchers in this system, there's nobody. The guy was Lucas Giolito, and they traded him away years ago for Adam Eaton in one of the all-time dumbest trades ever. And I said at the time, and I will still always stick by this: you don't trade a top pitching prospect for a mid-level outfielder ever. And if you're going to do it, you don't trade another 2 pitching prospects along with it, and that's what they unloaded the tank with 3. It was Lopez, it was Ronaldo Lopez, It
That's right.
was Dane Dunning, and it was Lucas Giolito, all of which for Adam Eaton, a guy who was always hurt, who maxes out at like 12 home runs. I mean, he's a nice baseball player, but are you serious? That to me was, you knew that deal was going to come around and bite them. And this is where it did, because they should have let Steven Strasburg walk, keep Rendon, had these young kids coming through the system, but that's not the case. That's not where they were. And then they had to go out and extend Strasburg, and, the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, and Eaton, I believe, suffered. I think he started strong with the Nats. My old
Right, then he
man's a
got hurt
Nationals
like a
fan,
week
so he's
into the
always
season.
texting me about the Nats. But yeah, he got hurt right away. He was like, "Effing Eaton, man, he's down already." Like, well, they got the ring, so
They did.
But right now they are
It's like
struggling.
Thanos, though. You ask him, what did it cost you? Yeah, say everything. But look, it's okay. You did get the ring, but here's the thing. They didn't get the ring because of that trade. Adam
Right.
Eaton wasn't the pivotal player
Right.
for the Nats. I mean, Juan Soto is the pivotal player for the Washington National. Let's be honest here. Let's call it what it is. Anthony Rendon is the pivotal player.
Yes.
And if they had to do it all again, imagine, Lucas Giolito in that
In
rotation,
that
how
rotation.
good that would
Oh
look.
my goodness. Yeah, with the four of them, absolutely filthy. So let's talk about Soto. There's only so much to say about this guy, but ADP 3, outfielder 2. He's 22 years old. He led the NL with an average of 351. He led baseball with a 478 WOBA. He missed 2 weeks to start the season due to COVID. He may have had the counting stats to get that MVP from Freddie Freeman. I don't want to take anything too much away from him, but right now the odds 850 to win MVP, 55 to 1 to lead baseball in hits, and 14 to 1 to lead baseball in home runs. Now, I don't think that you have to make the playoffs to win the MVP. We've seen it before with Trout. You and I chatted about this on your show a couple weeks ago at Fantasy Pros about MVPs and long shot odds and things like that. Obviously, Soto is not one of those guys, but Stanton 1 year won the MVP. I go back. I think A-Rod won the MVP 1 year, with the Texas team, but not very good. Is this a bet that you're willing to make? And where does he rank for you? Is it Acuna 1 and then Soto 2, or is Tatis 2? Like, where, if you're lucky to have a pick in the top 3, is Soto going to be a selection for you?
Soto is 1-1 in my heart.
Oh, baby,
I'm sorry. He is 1-1. And it's because I think with all the other guys, you can find one flaw. You could say with, we'll take fantasy first and then we'll talk about an MVP. If you say Mike Trout's missed some time the last couple of years, right? He's had some injuries. It's fair. Mookie Betts' style of play is very aggressive. That sometimes can be a problem. Tatis, still young, still developing. We still, maybe there is a downside we haven't seen. Who knows? It could even be more upside. Yes. And Acuna, the batting average can fluctuate a little bit with him in fantasy. Yeah, you're getting all the stolen bases, but with Soto, it's like, I can't find the hole. I can't see the negative. I just don't see it anywhere. He is Pujols. He is the generational talent, in my opinion. And just like Pujols early in his career, it happened kind of out of nowhere, right? Most people did not know who Albert Pujols was.
No.
And he came in and just like put on a show that nobody ever saw. And then everyone said, well, can it be true? And then it just never stopped for the next, decade and change. And here we are, he's still playing, but last year for him. But I would put Soto out there as my number one bet for MVP too, because he is the standalone guy in his team. Trey Turner is a really good player. They did some other things in the offseason, which I'm sure we'll get to, but Acuna still got Freeman there. And I always feel like there's two guys that's always difficult. And the same can be said with Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger. There's also some big time pitching on that team too. So it's a media award at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that is always why I think Tatis should be in that conversation too. I think he's kind of the Padres are the media attention darling. And I think it's not all about performance. It's about performance and spotlight and narrative, because people are voting for a narrative when it comes to MVP. And I think that's the thing that, whether it be NFL or MLB, when people start wagering on MVP, you have to build that case a little bit for what's the narrative. And I think the narrative for Juan Soto is he is that transcendent player that can do that. I think Tatis is his bigger competition than even Acuna or even Mookie Betts for that matter.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you said. Soto is, and again, I always have to remind myself, and that's why I say it. He's only 22. What he did in the
It's
World Series
ridiculous, right? I mean,
that,
that is
oh
ridiculous.
man, that home run off Verlander in the World Series when he brought the back to first,
Oh.
just like it's like, oh, you guys are doing it. You're bringing the
Well,
back to
yeah,
first. I'm
like you
gonna
did
bring
it.
it to
So
first
I
too.
figured I would go up and hit a home run off the best pitcher in baseball and take my bat with me. I mean, it's not supposed to be that easy.
No, it's not, especially for somebody that young, and the patience and the poise that he has at the plate, like 41 walks, 28 strikeouts. This guy's walking more than he's striking out.
It's
And
Pujols.
it really is. It's a great comparison.
Go back and look at early Pujols stat stuff,
Yeah.
and it is eerie how similar it is to Soto. And just like Pujols early on, we're just scratching the surface of Juan Soto. Like there's another gear in here as we give him more lineup protection now this year, where you bring in Kyle Schwarber. Josh Bell's having a phenomenal spring.
Yeah, they both are actually.
They
both
are. And you know
solid.
what's great is that, Josh Bell, talk about like difference a year makes, right?
Oh
There's just
yeah.
nobody around him in Pittsburgh. Now he's got Juan Soto, he's got Turner, he's got Robles, he's got all these guys and Schwarber. Like this is what Josh Bell can just go and hit. Like he doesn't have to worry about carrying an offense anymore, not even close to it. But Juan Soto is he's playing the game on a different level. And as fun as Tatis and Acuna are to watch, and Mookie Betts is a great personality, and Trout is Trout. If you ask me right now, who do you want to start a Major League Baseball franchise with?
Yeah,
It's Soto.
It's Soto. I agree with you too. And he's going to give you a little bit of speed. I like the bet because of everything that you just talked about. The Dodgers are stacked. The Braves got a couple nice pieces there too. And if the Nats find a way to get into the postseason, the pitching had to have shown up, right? That's one thing, but it's also a kid in Juan Soto who is just absolutely unbelievable. You mentioned Josh Bell. His ADP is 141. This is what he's doing in spring. You can take it with a grain of salt, but I think it's a positive thing going to a new team and having him hit. I mean, he hit 37 home runs 2 years ago, right? Last season was definitely wacky, and there was nobody in that lineup. And you're right. I mean, there was just no protection. You and I are a big believer in that. This is what he's slashing: 385, 457, 897, an OPS of 1.345. He's got 5 homers, 5 doubles, 15 for 39, 12 RBIs, 11 runs.
That's
and then
good.
Schwarber they bring in, who's got 4 bombs. He's hitting 275. We all know that he's got some pop in his bat too. And his ADP is 197. Any interest in these guys in drafts?
Yeah, I have interest in both. And I know you're going to laugh at me, but they're in the best shape of their lives too. They are, and spring is not important for most players, but it's important for some. And these two in particular, I think was very important for because they have a lot to prove. Schwarber, certainly in the last year of his deal, same thing with Bell. These are guys that are looking at cashing in, and these are players that I think, they came in Schwarber looks like half the man he used to be. Yeah. I mean, like crazy different. And Josh Bell just looks like he's free and easy right now. And I think that's very important. And what I love about both these guys is the ADP is still low. So in fantasy leagues, if you're looking for some extra pop later on, Kyle Schwarber is a perfect 4th outfielder or 5th outfielder to drop onto that roster. And you're probably going to get 30 bombs, and he'd probably hit 250 or something like that. Hopefully somewhere in that range. It's not always going to be perfect, but you're going to get the power. And then when it comes to Josh Bell, you're drafting him basically like a corner guy, but there's the outside chance he finishes as a top 10 first baseman because first 100%. Base isn't great. And we actually just talked about this on the Fantasy Pros pod we just recorded about 10 minutes ago before we started here. And he was number 1 on Dan Harris, my co-host's list there as potential league winners for that very reason. And Josh Bell is being drafted as a corner guy, but my goodness, if he has a 35 home run season, that's huge. That's an incredible boost for his value. And going back to that breakout season, he had an incredible 6 to 8 week run, and then it kind of faded off. So I've always been kind of hesitant when it comes to Josh Bell. I'm less hesitant now. He's with the Nationals on a contract year. That combination of things and the ADP on top of that is low. There's just every reason why you should be buying there.
Yeah, and a decent on base guy too. Last year he struck out I'm seeing a career high 26%, but for his career, even with that number, it's at 19. Like this is a guy who can put the bat on the ball, and he's definitely got pop, man. There's no question. His first full season in the bigs, he hit 26 home runs and 90 RBIs, and I remember being into him in that point, and then he had the fall off, and then that big season in 2019 where he talked a lot because over at The Athletic, I was producing the Pittsburgh Pirates podcast.
Boy, what a fun time that must have been.
Man, the guys made.
What did you do wrong to end up with that gig?
I had all the brutal teams. I had
You had Texas too, didn't you?
let's see,
You had
I
the
had
Rangers,
Texas, I
the
had
Pirates.
the Rangers, I had the
Let's give the
Reds,
new guy the
I had
worst
the
teams in
Pirates.
baseball.
Is
Oh,
that why they let me go? I mean, I don't know. I was with all the rough
honestly, if I were you, I would have just walked. Yeah, it was.
I had the
They did you a
Bengals for
favor.
football. I had the Red Wings who had the worst NHL season of all time, I think, when I was there. So they did a good job. Beer Tenfold did a good job of just trying to make it creative anyways. But we talked a lot. There was a lot of talk that season about Bell and his launch angle, and a lot of players looking into those numbers, right? And his chicks dig the long ball and trying to get some bombs in it. And it did help his game out a little bit. But I thought last year he was trying to hit home runs too much and he was striking out a little bit. But I like the new environment that he has. A couple other guys here. Let's do Robles. Last week, last week we talked about him right on your show when we were doing just some values and some bargain hunters, and there's been a lot of talk if he's going to lead off or not. But this is a guy who's got an ADP of 134, and again a wide range of outcomes over at NFBC. Min pick 70, max 208. I would say Roto has a lot to do with that. What do you make of him? Still very, very young, Joe.
Yeah, 24 years old, and I'm not ready to throw in the towel on him just yet. I mean, he was the higher ranked prospect once upon a time above Soto coming into things. And people, it's so funny to me. Last year, people in like the third, fourth round couldn't, they would elbowing people out of the way to take Victor Robles. Now nobody wants to touch him. What are you, crazy? I hate this whole short-term memory loss that people seem to have about players. And meanwhile, they're willing to give certain guys all the rope in the world. And typically they end up hanging themselves. Like, these are the same people that will draft Giancarlo Stanton every single year. And it's just like, but it won't touch Victor Robles. And I was like, what's your problem here? But Robles, especially in season-long Roto, I think is worth the aggressive investment. And I'm saying aggressive because of what you said, which is the ADPs all over the map, right? Like, you see people being very aggressive. I would rather be aggressive and wrong on him. And I don't think you're going to be, because I think in that format in particular, the one thing you can count on is I think no matter how good or bad he is, as long as he's playing every day, he's probably going to steal 25 to 30 bags. So you can bank that. Everything else is a bonus. If he hits 20 home runs, awesome. If he hits 15, okay. If he hits for a 275 average, awesome. If he hits for 240, okay, you still got the steals. So at the end of the day, it's about getting that one category. But there's very few guys at that same ADP that offer the same upside. Buxton's probably another one that same range, who's an equal risk to Victor Robles. In some ways more, because we've seen more injury track record with Byron Buxton.
Freak ones too. Jeez, he sneezed a couple weeks ago and got hurt?
Well, you know what I like about Buxton too? He came in a little heavier to camp finally. He was always very slight, which I thought was, with his style of play and being as slight as he was, he needed to bulk up a little bit. And he saw a little of that this year in the offseason. And I think that's a positive. So I think I would tick that in the positive Byron Buxton category box. But I would say with Victor Robles, if you're in an OBP league, yeah, he's probably going to hurt you in OBP a little bit, probably going to hurt you in batting average a little bit, but you're drafting him for that one thing. But when you're drafting him for that one thing, he comes with the caveat where there's upside for a whole lot more. And if indeed they get their wish, and you've seen it in the spring, they've hit him number one quite a bit.
Yeah.
If he hits number one in that order, he's going to score 100 runs. I'm telling you right now, no matter what the OBP, no matter what the batting average is, because that lineup around him so good. And I want him hitting in front of Trey Turner and Juan Soto, because he's going to see a ton more fastballs there. I don't want him hitting 7. I think the best way to get Victor Robles going is actually to just be aggressive, put him in the one spot, leave him alone there, and just live and die with it for a while if you're the Nats, because if you keep hitting him 7, he's not going to get that line of protection. He's not going to see those same fastballs that you want him to do. He's not going to build that confidence. So it's kind of like chicken and egg. Like, you can't say, okay, go hit in the 7 hole until you earn the one spot. No, put him in the one spot, let him fail there. If he fails, okay, you move him down, but give him a good month and a half run there before you evaluate it. Because I think if you just leave him there, I think things will be fine.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm totally into him. I think there's a lot of potential still to be had. Again, we're talking about the young age. The strikeouts are a bit of an issue, but I think he can get it down to maybe 22%, and that would be enough, right? See a few pitches, get on base, and I agree 100%. He can score 100 runs. He can steal you 30 bags. I think that is the ceiling. And 17 home runs 2019. We talked last week about the ball. yeah, people are saying it's not going to have a
I
lot
think
of
this is
pop,
going to
but
get way too much publicity. Like, I mean, and really, if Major League Baseball home runs are really down in April and ratings start to go down, what do you think is
bring
going to
the
happen to
new
those
ball
balls?
back. Yeah,
Yeah, I
bring that
mean,
old ball back.
by the way, I changed my team name in our league. I don't know if you see that.
What is it?
Every year I've always got, something Don Zimmer related. So this
Yeah.
is Don Zimmer's Juiced Balls, and it's this wonderful, very flattering picture of Don Zimmer with his leg up on the bench, which I'm sure you can imagine in your brain, and it's just as unsettling and wonderful as it is in your head.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is there a sleeper on this team? I don't want to call Starling Castro a sleeper, but this is a guy that's basically free. The position is weak. If you're playing with, middle infield spots, maybe you can put him in there.
I'll tell you what, who I would actually say is Jan Gomes, because I hate
Another
catcher.
guy. Yeah.
But you know what? Suzuki's not there anymore, right?
Yeah.
So Gomes should have more of his run, and he's a pretty decent hitter. Like
he is. He's got some
look,
pop too.
I just don't, catchers and closers, they're like the kickers of fantasy baseball. And I don't want to pay a lot. I don't want to go chasing them, but I think Gomes can be a decent guy there. I think, Carter Kieboom was a player that I really wanted to see. I thought he was put in a good spot to be successful last year, but now I'm good. I'm moving on from that. I thought last year was the time for him to really kind of stake his claim to the job. And he had good AAA numbers to support that. But, it's funny because I feel like Schwarber, Bell, Robles, they're all kind of sleepers because they're all being undervalued.
Yeah.
So it's funny because the Nats are a team that's either top of the line, like first round, top 5-6 players where it comes to Juan Soto and Trey Turner or Max Scherzer, who's like a second round pick, or it's all these guys late who have a lot of upside. There's very little in between. And I think that's what makes them tough from a wagering standpoint too, because there is no kind of cushy middle with the Nats. It is kind of a boom or bust situation there. And I think it's funny because the fantasy aspect of it is kind of informing the gambling aspect of it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of Nats fans have given up on Kieboom. I remember a couple of years ago when he was called up in NFBC leagues. I mean, a lot of people spent fab on this guy, and he did nothing but disappoint. I mean, he had the 37 strikeout percentage in 2019, very small sample size, but playing time seems like it could be there. Howie Kendrick is gone from this team, so maybe he gets in 400 plate appearances, but I don't have very high expectations for him to, like, maybe he steals 4 bags. Is he going to hit over 250? No. And is he going to get you 10 home runs? That would probably be the ceiling for him. I had Gomes written down too. It's like Gomes, brackets, not sexy, playing with 2 catcher leagues, just wait it out. And that's why you get the black book, because all the strategy that you have there.
Updated RPV coming out today for those people who subscribe. It just redid it for.
You want to explain that to people quickly on the way?
Well, look, rankings are nice. Tiers are better, but quantified rankings and tiers are where it's at. That's where the cool kids hang out. And that's how you get an advantage and turn it into a strategy. So it's one thing to like a player over another player, but what relative position value does is it shows you just how much better a player is than the fantasy league average second baseman or first baseman or SP1. And it's understanding how to exploit the spots in your roster and turn that into basically a strategy, because rankings are cool and everybody does rankings and stuff like that. But even with tiers, it's like, well, there's the drop off, but how significant is it? And it starts to tell you exactly how good or bad a position is as a whole too, because you'll see how many players are in the negative. And fantasy sports is easy. It's about me outproducing you for as many draft spots as I can, and roster spots, as I can. And if I can do that consistently with players that are above the fantasy league average, then I'm going to probably do pretty well in most leagues. And, we're number 1 in baseball and football every year for a reason. It's because people have success with it. And I think it is so important for people to understand that, everybody's got good information. You're doing great information here at FTN, Fantasy Pros is, but it's not enough. Everybody's got that. So what we need is strategy, and strategy for league specific. Like we have chapters for season long roto, for head-to-head points, head-to-head cats, and everybody's playing different formats. So you got to have a book where you can go and reference everything. And we got 100 prospect profiles for fantasy done by Eric Cross. So if you're in dynasty leagues, we got you covered there. So we like to be like the Lord of the Rings thing. We like to be the one book to rule them all. That's kind of that's what we're going for. And we get great contributors like Chris Meaney every year too. It doesn't hurt.
Man, the info in here is unbelievable. The price is not expensive. There's a link in Joe's Twitter handle, Joe Pisapia 17, and it is absolutely worth the buy. You got a lot of bright minds in here. Cross is going to join next week. We're going to talk some prospects and Red Sox as well. And I don't know how many
to talk Red Sox with, because he got that great New England accent. Whatever he's talking about.
I know. And I don't know how many people have tweeted, and because I'm part of the tags, I'm just like, they're blown away with this book and the success. We have a shout out to our guy G-Man J, who's going to be in the draft tonight. He's like, yeah, I buy the book and I play fantasy leagues with Chris and Joe, and it's how I could compete. I beat
That's
them
how
both.
he beat us.
I beat them both because of this book.
I know.
Taking our advice and kicking our ass. It's awesome.
It's all right. I'm laughing all the way to the bank. As long as we keep selling books, it's fine. I you know what? And Jay's a hell of a player too. Like,
Yes.
and that's the thing,
man.
you know, there's a lot of people who are just really great players out there too. And it's just so hard to separate yourself. And I think that's what we're trying to do with the Black Book, is give you something where it's like, okay, let's get real specific about strategy and the player pool for every different format and what it looks like this particular year. Cause so much fantasy content is very general. And that ends up not kind of moving the needle for you in a lot of leagues, because everyone's kind of starting at a higher level. Like 20 years ago, you know, the people who were reading, you know, Roto World when it first came out, now it's not even Roto World anymore. You know, people are like, you know, checking out like for beat reporter stuff. Now Twitter, everything is different now. So now it's so hard to separate. So you need something like RPV and relative position value to kind of be a guideline for you. And I had somebody who just messaged me yesterday. He's like, hey, I used the RPV and then I did a draft and I dropped it into FantasyPros for the grade and it gave me an A+. And I was like, that's exactly it. And see how it carries over there. And you know, it's look, there's so many great tools out there, and FantasyPros has some amazing stuff with the draft wizard and stuff where you can do all these mocks and try out all these different strategies, and you could use RPV with that. And it's terrific. And when you can combine like really good sources, like all the stuff we do with pros on top of Black Book, on top of some other stuff, it's going to be hard to beat you. I can tell you that.
I know you don't want to share too much. I'm just kidding. We got the big draft tonight, but any guy, I know last week, I mentioned this earlier, but last week you and I got together and we had a show where I think we gave 10 each, bargain hunters, like guys that just some value. But who are some guys that you noticed in the draft so far that you just have, you know, a lot of shares of?
It's tough because we're such good friends and we're drafting tonight, and I've got a whole bunch of guys in this list because listen, I got less money left than everybody because of that expensive Max Scherzer, so I need these guys. Well, you start taking them, I'm telling you, I'm driving up to Canada to find you. I think what you're starting to do is you're starting to recognize where there's some value, like the Ty Francis who are having great springs and have playing time. I think if you look at Freddie Peralta getting that 5th starter job, he's got upside. Is he going to be great? I don't know. Got a good spring. Carlos Rodon, of all people, look at him getting that 5th starter job with the White Sox. That is like the most under the radar spring. The guy's got 10 Ks in 9 innings or something like that, and hasn't given up an earned run. Like, he's been untouchable. I don't think he's walked anybody either. So look, springs don't mean everything, but I think those guys who have opportunities for playing time or 5th starter jobs, that's the ones you want to start to keep an eye on. You know, we mentioned Victor Robles, Trey Mancini is another player too that I think has been grossly undervalued. All you want to see is him healthy. I think all of those DH guys are grossly undervalued. Cruz, Alvarez, JD Martinez, even Stanton at the right price, as much as I joked before. I think, you know, if you start out your draft early with pitchers, that's how you make up your offense. You take a shot on a Cruz or an Alvarez. I think people forget how good Alvarez is too. Another guy who's like 23 years old. It should not be that easy. Yes, I know the knees are an issue. He's not going to play the field. Let's just get him to opening day, and then all bets are off, because that's a guy that could hit 50 home runs, and that's not a hot take. That is just truth. Like, that's how good this dude is. So yeah, I think those are the kind of guys you're looking for right now that, you know, can outperform their ADP, or, you know, people dismiss because they're utility bats. And I'd let closer come to you. I really would. I did it in tout last weekend. We ended up getting Will Smith for a couple bucks. We ended up getting Amir Garrett for a couple bucks and Devin Williams for $5. Okay, I'll go with that for my bullpen, and we'll take that and we'll see how it all goes. And meanwhile, there's all these other people who spent, you know, $10 or $12 on Kirby Yates and he's out already. It's infuriating because now you're like back to square one. And that's what's tough. But I would be confident of all the guys that have been out so far. Romano is the easy replacement. I don't think there's an easy replacement in Baltimore or Texas. I think it's going to be a complete cluster. But for me, I think the one guy is Romano, because he's another one just been dominant in spring. And I think that's what you want as a closer.
Yeah, and he's really good too.
Good.
Yeah, they had something. They still do have a very strong bullpen in Toronto, even with Yates down. But it was looking like one of the best in my opinion. I thought it was pretty strong last year too. Joe, you're strong takes on the way out. Mets division.
Oh,
Do they
they're
win
gonna
it?
lose it. No, they're gonna lose to the Braves. I think the Carrasco injury hurts them. I think they will be a playoff team though, because
Yeah.
eventually when they get Syndergaard and Carrasco back, all the Mets have to do is get in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to win the division. I think Ian Anderson and Morton and Fried is too much. If those guys stay healthy, I think that's going to be a problem for the Mets. I think Atlanta wins the division, but I think the Mets are the more dangerous playoff team, and I think the Lindor trade is just enormous, and they got to extend him as soon as possible because that guy is another. You don't get players in their prime at that age coming to an organization where you can sign them like that. So it doesn't happen very often nowadays in Major League Baseball. So I would take advantage of that if I were running the Mets, which I'm not for now. We'll see if that changes.
For now. At Joe Pisapia 17, what he is doing for now is giving great fantasy baseball advice over at Fantasy Pros. Going to be doing daily podcasts every single day, giving some takes for those who are into MLB DFS. Thanks, Joe. Check out the Black Book as well, and football will be around the corner, so he's going to pump out another book, number one selling book right there. From Joe, myself, Chris Meaney, thanks for taking the time to hang out. We will be back on Monday. Cheers.